Okey doktor, saya dah hantar ke. Alright, boleh mula doktor?
Okey, dah boleh mula ya?
Yes.
Okey. Assalamualaikum and good morning everyone. Welcome to IPSIS Webinar Series 2021. I am Associate Professor Dr. Ellie Suzana Kasim from Accounting Research Institute UITM. I'll be the moderator for this session. Okay, today we have with us two speakers specially invited from UITM's Research Management Center, or RMC in short. Our first speaker is Dr. Yong Soon Kong, who will talk about publication ethics. Following that, we will listen to Dr. Amirah Abdurrahman. She is going to share with us on research ethics awareness and the procedures on how to apply for ethics approval. So before we start, I would like to brief a little bit on our session today. The first presenter will speak. After that, we will open for question and answer session. Then we will have our second speaker to give a talk, followed by another question and answer session. So if you have any question, please share them in our chat box. Okay, without further delay, let me introduce to you Dr. Yong Soon Kong. Dr. Yong is currently holding the position of the Coordinator of Publication at the Research Management Center. His role includes monitoring the performance of UITM journals, provides training for editorial board of these journals, and assists in making policies and strategies related to scientific journal publication. Dr. Yong is also a member of the Faculty of Applied Sciences. His research interests are inorganic synthesis and environmental remediation with value-added agricultural waste materials. He is the founder of the Soil Assessment and Remediation Research Group and has received funding from national and overseas institutions such as Khon Kaen University and Chulalongkorn University in Thailand. So everyone, please join me to welcome Dr. Yong to give his talk. Over to you, Dr. Yong.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Ellie, for the kind introduction. So can you see the slides?
Yes, doctor.
All right, so thank you very much. So my name is Yong Soon Kong, so you just call me Dr. Yong. I am from FSG, my parent faculty is FSG. So I think Dr. Ellie have already mentioned my field of research. So I'm attached to RMC under the Ethics and Publication Unit. So thank you very much, IPSIS, for inviting us to give this talk. We have been giving talks related to ethics and publication a lot lately due to various reasons, in which I'll go into the detail when I present my slides later. So today I'm going to start with ethics in publication. So just to remind the viewers, we are supposed to start with the ethics in research presented by Dr. Amirah, but I choose to start now due to some appointments with the hospital. So don't get confused, yeah? Later on, Dr. Amirah will going to brief you on how to apply for research ethics approval, but I'm going to dwell more on the latest issue related to ethics in publication, let's say, yeah? So a little bit of introduction to you about Ethics and Publication Unit, RMC. So in the management level, myself and Dr. Amirah is in place. So I'm actually the head of Ethics and Publication Unit, so I forgot to update my CV actually. So sorry about that, Dr. Ellie. And then now the coordinator is Dr. Amirah. Yeah, but we pick different portfolio. I myself will handle more on the publication and hence the ethics as well, whereas Dr. Amirah will be handling more on the research ethics. Yeah. So below are the supporting staff under our unit. So those with the green frame, they are directly reporting to me for whatever the matters related to publication. So they will handle a lot of issues related to the performance evaluation and approval of new journals in UITM, whereas those in red frame, those are the ladies that handles all the ethics approval application. Yeah. So these are the contents that I'm going to go into. So to take you through, I'm going to start with the introduction related to scholarly publication. And then we're going to go through many examples of misconduct, the misconduct of the scholarly publication. So that I will cover plagiarism, fabrication and falsification, authorship, and finally, the hottest issue right now, predatory journal, and finally the conclusion. So there are many more examples of publication misconduct, but for the interest of time, so these are the 4 major issues that I'm going to touch here. And I tailored this talk to postgraduate students. So, introduction to scholarly publication. You might ask, what is a scholarly publication? So it's actually sitting at number 5, dissemination, which is the end of the so-called research cycle. So this research cycle begins with the probably the students, the postgraduate students, making their proposal. So you start making the proposal. So inside there, you're going to find out what is the research question. The pressing issues related to research. So you're going to research and find out what is the problem. And then finally, you conduct the research according to the proposal that you have made, collecting data, and finally document it. Now, this documentation is only a kind of lab report. So it's not yet finalized into a research paper. Now, in this dissemination stage is where you write your paper. That includes scholarly publication. Now, when we talk about scholarly publication, it's a very general word for papers, because papers can come from conference. That's what we call proceeding. It also can come in the form of journal articles, which is your KPI for most of us, including staff and postgraduate students. But that also covers books. So there are many forms of scholarly publication, but depending on the KPI that is put forward for you, so we are going to have very different targets right now. But it's quite safe to say that all of us will need to publish in journal articles. That's quite known now. So this and why is that? I will later tell you why journal, but it can be safely said that a student can only graduate after publication. Because why? It is said to be a research can be said to be finished or completed with publication, and that is why. That is why all postgraduate students need to publish, to signify that that is the end of your PhD or master candidature. So articles are written by researchers expert in a specific field. So it's not written by anybody. So scholarly publication is written by scholars. And when we talk about scholars, we're talking about researchers like you, the postgraduate student, and you, and also researchers, And then it serves as a platform to discuss recent or existing research. So these are the avenue where researchers were going to find the latest research related to their field of expertise, and then to discuss and find more ideas, to generate new ideas, so that the research can continue. So when you talk about that, the quality of journals usually is assumed to be the highest. Because why? Journals, there is a very strict rule in terms of quality control. And that quality control can only be ensured by a strict peer review process. So that is the key. That is the key to maintain the quality of a journal. And then efficient management in accordance to the ethical standards set by Committee of Publication Ethics. So this organization is a non-profit organization set up in UK. So it is an organization that is formed by many major publishers. That includes those from Elsevier, from Clarivate. So all those major publishers, they have members inside, so that they set standards. They set the best practice to be followed by publishers around the world in terms of how to manage the journal ethically. So these are the three major what they call organization that sets their own standard, but it's quite safe to say that these three organizations set the standards quite similarly. There aren't much differences. Yeah. However, major publishers in the world, including those who are the university publishers like UITM Press, we also adopt the guidelines set by COPE. So that is the golden standard lah. And in fact, COPE actually have like a forum for people to discuss what are the new cases of ethical issues. They can discuss there and they can suggest what they say collective action so that it can be adopted by major publishers around the world. Yeah. So what I'm trying to say here is that publication misconduct is ever evolving. It's never fixed. Last time we never hear about plagiarism, but nowadays there are a lot of plagiarism and they already solved that problem. And there are many, many issues that are evolving. So that is why COPE is there, so that they find solution for new problems related to publication ethics. So why peer review process is such painful? I think for those who have submitted papers, student per se, you're going to know that rejection can be quite painful, and I agree with you. Now this is a diagram that shows you how the peer review process goes around. So the red button here, rejection, but it's part of the process, I would say. So students, don't be discouraged if you get a rejection. Don't be sad. I only be sad if I get a rejection without any reason, and that can happen. Yeah, because why? Sometimes when they look at our paper, they already know the quality of it, the title itself, for example. So don't take it personally. I mean, if you get a rejection and you get a constructive comment, be happy with it. And that is how I deal with the disappointment of being rejected. Yeah. And because why? Because when you talk about journal, they have to maintain the quality and high standard. And it's only can be maintained by this peer review process. Yeah. So that is the major criteria that the journal should have. Yeah. Maintain the quality through this peer review process, and the higher the rejection rate usually signifies the higher the standard, yeah, the standard and the quality of one journal, which is why when you ask by your supervisor or we staff are requested by superior to publish in high impact journals, easier said than done, right? Because why? High impact journals, higher rejection rate, but that is normal, yeah. So I'm going to the next part, which is the misconduct in scholarly publication. So I'm going to go to a few examples by referring to countries, but by all means, I'm not trying to discredit these countries. These are real cases happening in those countries. Yeah. So I'm going to go with the first one. So these are the annual and global cases reported by COPE. So COPE recorded all these cases. I don't think I need to explain too much. No matter what types of misconduct that you see here, ranging from fraud, innocent error conducted by the researcher, or maybe plagiarism or duplicated publication, all cases rises dramatically, beginning at the beginning of the millennium, like right here at the beginning of 2000, year 2000 onwards, it rises sharply. Reason is because during this year, most of the tenure of the academician, the researchers, they are by contract. Now that begins in the Western countries. So in order to ensure that their contract is extended, they will have to show results, how much of papers that they have published. And because of that, they have to think of some way. Either they ramp up their output in research, or they have to do it by hook or by crook. So this is what we call by crook lah, as you can see. And it increased dramatically because of the sometimes very high KPI set by a certain organization. Yeah. So the rise is evident. and it increased by almost like 10 times. So the statistic is real. Yeah, it is increasing. I actually have a breakdown of countries, but for the interest of time, so I did not show that, but you get the idea. Yeah. So what contributes to this one is because of the pressure, like I said to you earlier, the KPIs, the annual performance evaluation that requires one to produce at least a certain number of papers. Now, those are the pressures that they have to deal with it. Now, more so for graduate students, because as far as I know, a master's student need to publish at least one index journal papers. Yeah, but this requirement has been relaxed as far as I know. Because now a student can also graduate with a MySite Index Journal, which is a good news for everybody. But for staff like us, we still have to publish in Scopus or Web of Science Index paper, Index Journal. So the pressure is still there, yeah. And another point is greed, because some institution, especially those institutions with a lot of funding, for every high impact journals that they publish, they will be rewarded with cash. So I think that happens a lot of years ago in those research-based university. So that might be a factor. Or maybe there's a lack of awareness in terms of the morals of conducting this kind of misconduct. Why? Because some people thought that that is not so guilty because you're not hurting anybody, but it hurts somebody in some ways, yeah. It will be. I will elaborate later, yeah. So these are the contributing factors. Now, there are a lot of examples of this publishing misconduct, and also based on the severity of each of these offense. Now, to begin with, these cases are what we call minimal paraphrasing with citation. Now, this is classified as one kind of a plagiarism, but the guiltiness, the guiltiness of this offense is reduced because they have citation. So that is why students, you're encouraged to cite no matter what. But if you fail to paraphrase, that also counts as a form of plagiarism. Yeah. And then the other one is redundant or duplicate publication. Although nowadays this one doesn't happen as rapidly as before, but it's still an offense that happens nowadays. Now this one is when people submit the same manuscript to two different publishers. So that is duplicate publication. Yeah. The next one is presenting work preceded by a consenting third party. So in other words, you call it ghostwriter. You engage ghostwriter, people write the paper for you, and then you submit it as your work. Although that consenting party, agree on that move. That is still not ethical. Yeah. And then number 4, falsely representing the individual contribution of the collaborating partners. So this is what we call in Bahasa Melayu, you can call it bonceng gratis. In English, we call it gift authorship. Yes, yeah, gift authorship is another issue, which I will explain to you later. And then translating the work of others without due acknowledgement. Now, this one is the same with the first offense. It's a kind of a plagiarism, but this one is more severe because they fail to acknowledge, they fail to cite the original sources. So that is more severe, yeah, a more severe form of plagiarism. And then there's another form of plagiarism, copying from others and submitting as own work. So that is the worst form of plagiarism, I would say. But nothing compares to this one, fabricating and doctoring data. That is plain cheating, I would say, because fabrication, the pelaku, yeah, the person who do this have the intent to cheat. So you can see, the severity is the highest because why? They have the intent to cheat. So that's the worst, yeah. And that is another one, non-disclosing conflict of interest with intention to commit fraud. So that also has an element of intentional cheating, yeah, and that is why they rank the worst in terms of the severity of the offense. Now, all of this will be covered by myself later on under the case studies later. So I'm going to the details of the first example of publication misconduct, which is plagiarism. And I think all of us are aware, because in 2014 in Malaysia, there has been a few cases, and this has made it to the mainstream media. And I also got it from mainstream media as well. So the story is about a prominent researcher. When this person did his PhD in 2004, during that time, technology is not advanced. And the awareness of plagiarism also probably is not as good as well. What happened is that after 8 years, technology catch up. There's a new technology called Turnitin. It is a software to detect similarity, not plagiarism. Yeah, I call it similarity. Yeah, because between the text of the original writer and his thesis, there is a very high similarity, and it is said that in a few chapters, the wording is exactly the same, word by word. So, but I mean, the problem is that inside his thesis, there is no mention at all of any sort of the original source. So there were no citation, and because of that, technology has catch up, and this is what he got. He got promoted. I mean, unfortunately, when he got confronted by this evidence, he just promoted to professor, but was forced to retire only a few months after he got promoted to professor. But I'm sure there are many reasons behind that, which I will not going to dwell with. But the main reason for his downfall, which he did not contest, is technology catch up. He did something years before, but catching up. So, I mean, this is what we say. It doesn't pay to commit a crime like this one. I mean, we thought when we do it, we thought that we can get away with it. With time, people might forget. But I mean, technology might catch up, and then some way and somehow it will get back to us. So this is why I told students, I mean, you can do it today, but what about later when people catch up? It will still harm your career. Yeah. Now, I think a lot of students have used this tool before. There are many tools that we use to paraphrase the original text. So this is one, and probably one of the worst, because I tested myself. Inside the text, the original text is, I did not plagiarize this essay. And after the paraphrasing, they suggest this sentence to me. I didn't counterfeit this exposition. So if the supervisor read this, and I have received this kind of things myself, the first thing I'm going to call a student, I'm going to give them what I think about what they did, and they did not contest at all. Yeah, and there are many ways students used to paraphrase, but the result of work is much worse than its original form. Yeah. So plagiarism in UITM is not new, and this is the outcome from a studies conducted in 2010. So nearly 50% of students admitted to having plagiarized, and almost all students know that others have plagiarized. So during that time, plagiarism is a common thing. I'm not sure whether the word acceptable is suitable here, but it seems like it, because half of it done it, and everybody knows it, which is quite bad during that time. And because of that, UITM in 2012 have began subscribing to Turnitin, and it's a compulsory for every supervisor to check their students' similarity index using Turnitin. Yeah. So remember what I said. Supervisor to check the similarity index, not student check and send it to supervisor. Not that way. It's the supervisor have to check it. Yeah. So that is from the survey. And then what happened if you do something wrong? So this is a policy. UITM also have one. Oops. So it is compulsory for all postgraduate students to submit a report before they're allowed to graduate, and it's the responsibility of supervisor to ensure that, yeah, supervisor's responsibility, So if the student is caught committing plagiarism, the supervisor also is responsible. And currently, the similarity index for student thesis must be less than 30%. And I believe that also applies for postgraduate student. Yeah. So what if the student fails to do that? So I would say if that is the case, then IPSIS might going to bar the students from going to the oral presentation, the viva. We cannot even submit the thesis until they finish up this thing. But what happened for FYP students who have already submitted? What would be the punishment? It would be failing a course, an F, yeah, or maybe suspension, or maybe expulsion altogether, yeah. But usually it's between these two, yeah. So I'm moving on to the next type of publication misconduct, which is fabrication and falsification. So just now what I said, the worst kind of offense in terms of publication misconduct. So what is this? It is about reporting experiments that were never conducted. In other words, you can call it fake science. There is no experiment. How do you get that info, those data? It never exists, those data. Yeah. So making up fake reference to support arguments. So sometimes students might going to create arguments in which they put a citation. So but when supervisor check that the source, the literature, and read through it, the literature never claims that those kinds of points. So that also can happen, yeah. It's not just data. Sometimes the discussion also can be falsified. And then the other one, falsification, is the manipulation of research materials, equipment, or process, and then changing or omitting data to suit a desired outcome. You have to admit sometimes the experiment may not go as smooth as you would like to think. Sometimes the result is not so good, but in order to make your result better, you omit a few. Now the trick is you can do it, provided you have enough evidence to omit that. We call it outliers. If you have enough evidence to say that point is an outlier, you can omit it. But this is without evidence. You just simply remove a few points to make your R-square value better. That is wrong. Yeah, you cannot do it. Every data is still a data. Yeah, if you don't have evidence to suggest otherwise. So in one example, in 2016 in Malaysia, I believe those in biology would know this image. This is a doctored image produced by a PhD student, which were graduated initially, but then rescinded his PhD. Because why? This image has been published in a high impact journal. I'm not sure how it happened, but there is an image processing expert who went through all these images and found out that there are duplication. So you can see on the left hand side, the graph, there are certain areas that are strange, because when they look at the blue patch and also the other's blue patch, it seems like they are very similar. Although when you first look at it, you don't have an idea that they're similar. The other image that also goes along with the same paper are those image of the cells. And you can see some of the cells that are identical. The purple ones, for example, they are large enough to compare. They're exactly the same, identical. If they're not identical, maybe they're flipped or maybe they're turned on a certain degree. But I mean, these are the examples of doctored image. Yeah. So what happened to these students? They were confronted. I mean, these students were confronted by these so-called results. The student then disappeared. So what do? I mean, that university have to tarik balik lah the PhD that they have awarded, alongside with all these high impact journals, all retracted. So the supervisors also were going to get investigated, because it's the responsibility of the supervisor to check and verify. So even though this offense is committed by a student, and the supervisor can be claimed to be cheated, but there's a certain degree of responsibility the supervisor have to take. So they were investigated, but fortunately they were cleared. Nothing happened. But one thing for sure, the reputation that the university has suffered greatly because of that. Yeah. So how do we counter this fabrication committed by student? I would say these are the things that the supervisors have to do. Yeah. Now, the supervisors will have to regularly check and verify the data given by the student. So that is why I myself, for example, I take my experience. every week, I would ask the student to send in their raw data, the data that they collected directly from experiment. I want to see those original data. Then after that, they come up with their processed data, the graphs, the tables, because they have a footing. I know where those data comes from based on the graph, yeah? And then after that, perhaps you might want to repeat the experiments, and I suggest the supervisor to do so if they have the time to do it. Because from my experience, I have experienced once, a few weeks before I took one student's data and presented in an international conference, when during the middle of writing, I felt weird. How come those results behave like that? And fortunately, during that time is a semester break, I have time. I took the same sample, went back into the lab and performed the same experiment, and the result were completely different. And my result is more predictable and can be explained by theory. So supervisors, be careful. Yeah, sometimes students might give you a fabricated data that you don't even know. So it's your responsibility, yeah, the supervisor, to check, double check if you can. Yeah. So next one is, I think this one is quite popular, I would say. Initially, I didn't know that this thing exists, but it exists and it's quite rampant. It's quite safe to say, yeah. It's called gift authorship or ghost authorship. They are different things, but they are equally damaging lah. Yeah. So before I go into authorship, let me explain to you the types of authorship. And this one also has been a contentious issue, also lately, by the same university that I talked about earlier in Malaysia, between a student and also her supervisor. Yeah. And they were discussing about the authorship. So here, there are two kinds of authorships that you might be interested. Okay, the first kind, or the first one, will carry the highest merit. Yeah, being the first author or the corresponding author, usually are those two individuals that will be given recognition for any paper published. Yeah. Now that is because the first author usually is assigned to students for a good reason, because the student usually is assumed to be the first one to conceive the idea of the research. So the idea is from them, but of course the supervisor helps polish it. So it's two-way, a bit two-way. Yeah. So the person who conceived the idea comes from both the student and also the supervisor. However, when it comes to the one who conduct the research, usually is students, and hence students usually will get to be the first author. Whereas the corresponding author usually goes to the supervisor or the owner of the project. Yeah. So don't think that supervisor always get the corresponding authorship, because if the entire project, the grant come from that person should have been the corresponding author as well. But the good news is, yeah, the good news is you can have more than one corresponding author. Can you have more than one first author? You can as well, but very rare. Yeah. So just for information, there are some papers that have two first author. There are two first author for a certain paper. They are not very normal, but it happens. It has happened before. I have seen before. Yeah. Okay. So these are the thing lah. Yeah. And by the way, being a corresponding author also gives you the opportunity for promotion and also for financial gains as well. Because like I said to you, the financial gains, the bonus people dish out, they only pay to corresponding author. Yeah. Okay, by the way, what about the others, the co-author? So this co-author, based on the contribution, if the contribution is much less or less significant, they were usually the co-authors. Now these co-authors can have different roles, beginning from the conceiving, the conception of the proposal, from conducting the experiment, helping analyze the sample, or maybe they can even just review the entire paper. But the point is that proofreaders usually they don't make to this list. Proofreaders, they just check the structure, the language, but they don't add to the academics. They don't add to the content. So that's why they don't qualify. Proofreaders usually don't qualify as co-authors. Yeah. Now the first thing is the first issue that I'm going to discuss here is gift authorship. So what is that? Yeah. Now, gift authorship is the inclusion of authors who did not contribute significantly to the study. So those are the individuals who did nothing for the content, but still get their name added for some reasons. And these reasons could be hierarchy. Like there is one very prominent researcher, you have to add him or her in order to have a higher probability that the paper can be accepted. That has happened before. Or maybe the students have to add the name of a certain individual because the certain individual demanded because they have used their instrument. Yeah, that also happens. Yeah. Or maybe it's because the requirement for graduation to increase the publication. Now this one is the so-called collaboration. So how this happened? Two postgraduate students. They need 3 papers. PhD students usually need 3 papers. But what if that PhD student can manage to get 1 paper? They have to graduate, right? So get another friend. This first student put the name of the other students. So collectively they have 2 papers already, right? But that is wrong. Yeah, you should not do that. You can only assign a fellow PhD student as a co-author only if that person contributes to the content of that paper. Then only you can do it, yeah? Not the other way, yeah? Now, the other issues that I want to go through is ghost authorship, in which these are the person who receive payment, yeah? The other word for ghost author in social media, usually these people appear in social media. They're going to solicit and offer you help. You cannot write, we can help you write. And usually they are like jumping between proofreaders and also motivators. I didn't say that not all proofreaders and motivators are behaving like that, but some offer this kind of service. They write for you straight away, no question asked. You just need to pay money. So what happened is that this raised many ethical issues, is that the writing doesn't come from the student. So if the paper is written nicely, that doesn't mean that the student that doesn't mean that the student knows how to write, because they pay other people to write it. And then the other thing is conflict of interest. Now the second thing about conflict of interest is more applicable to people from the private sector. Yeah, they have a certain product that they want to claim. They employ people from scientific background to write something in favor of their product. You see, they are creating false news, right? But that has happened before, especially in the food industry. Food industry, pharmaceutical industry, that has happened before. But these kind of issues are from overseas. Probably I haven't heard it in Malaysia yet, but it happened before. Yeah. So this is one advertisement that I got recently from Facebook. Maybe you have seen it, maybe you haven't, and maybe there are more. But my advice to the student is, if you have seen it, don't even think of engaging these kind of people, because you won't know whether they are reliable or not. That is one. And number 2, it is wrong. You will going to face the music when it comes to the time when you are in the Viva session, because whatever they have written, you'll be tested during Viva. The examiner will ask you whatever they have written, why that is that, why that is so. And if you fail to answer the question, that shows that you don't understand what you're working. Yeah, and that is unacceptable. Yeah. So this is one that I got, okay, from India. It's not from Malaysia, it's from India, but I believe in Malaysia also have a few. So stay away, yeah, stay away. It doesn't pay to engage ghostwriter, yeah. And then the other one, more professional. This one that I got it years before. This one is from overseas. They offer the service to undergraduate students or postgraduate students. You want to write thesis in 14 days, no problem. But do you have 2,300 ringgit? If you have it, okay. Okay, by the way, if you have the money. But then again, why should you? If you can write yourself, why not? Right? So stay away lah, yeah. So the solution, policing ghosts or give authorship is often difficult because why? They are consenting. They are happy with what they are doing. I mean, the ghostwriter have their money. The people who engage ghostwriter, the student or probably the staff, they have their manuscript. So no issues, right? Nobody complained. And that is why, even though it's wrong, it's very hard to catch people in this aspect. Yeah? And authorship matter should be consented by all parties at initial stage of manuscript preparation. Now, if you have submit to index journals nowadays, at the beginning of the submission, they will ask you to engage every authors, including co-authors, and have their consent. Yeah, they agree that you are the first author. They agree that you are the corresponding author. All must have consent. And if they don't have your consent, if they don't ask for the consent, they will ask for their email. So by the time you submit your manuscript, every co-author will going to receive a notification. The arrangement of the authorship, they also know. So that clarifies a lot of things, yeah. And a lot of this authorship dispute happens because somebody is submitting the manuscript secretly. So a lot of this issue happens because of that. Yeah. So if authorship dispute remains unresolved, now this is for UITM students, yeah. Now student, if this one happens to you, you should first talk to your supervisor. Try resolve it within yourself, yeah. Because maybe it happens by mistake, maybe it's unintentional, so that can be reversed, no problem. Now, if the students still cannot resolve the problem, go to the school, go to the faculty where you have this issue from and seek for a third person to mediate the problem. But if all things fails, then probably come to IPSIS, maybe come to me. I also can help a bit because ethics also comes under my unit. We can offer you advice, but still we prefer you to resolve it with your supervisor, yeah. Nothing cannot be unresolved, everything can be settled. Okay, the next one is an example of publication misconduct, duplicate and multiple publications. So this one I'm going to go really quick, but this is very significant because why? It has happened in China, and this one is very creative. It happens and is committed by a researcher. Actually, they have KPI to meet. They have to send 7 papers per year. So what happened is this guy have one set of results. They employ 7 ghost author to write differently, send into 7 journals, and it comes back, they have 8 paper. They have 8 paper all accepted. But you see, the community of publisher, they are very small. I mean, just look at Cope. They come from all the publisher. So people knows. So what happened is that all 8 papers have been retracted and they know this guy. So they have been banned by all these publisher. So if all major publisher ban this one single person, essentially this guy cannot publish anymore. So don't do it, yeah, because technology makes the world very small. So if you try to cheat one guy, the others will know, yeah. So please don't do it, yeah. Okay, example of publication. The next one is predatory journal. Now this one I would like to stress out because earlier this year there was an issue regarding predatory journals in which Malaysia's name has come up, which is bad enough. So I'm going to dwell a little bit about predatory journals. Where does it come from? It comes from Jeffrey Beal. Now this is a librarian in University of Colorado, was a librarian in University of Colorado before the university made him go away due to obvious reason. Because why? In his work, he created a list. Yeah, that list is a list of journal that is deemed predatory. And what makes his downfall is inside that list, there are 2 major publishers, which is strong enough to go to his university, talk to his boss, and ask his boss to stop him. And they did, unfortunately. So what happened is in beginning of 2017, there were no more Beal's list, so we don't have any reference for predatory journals nowadays. Yeah, so the impact of predatory publishing can be severe, even though you don't realize it, but it's quite severe. Because why? When you pay predatory journals, you are paying money, article publication charge. But the problem is, when you pay them, some of them may not be a legit publisher. So they just publish all the fake signs even though your science is a legit one, your paper is published alongside with others which is doubtful in terms of their scientific merit. So you're considered yourself bad. Yeah, people might assume that your paper also is equally bad. Yeah, so that's financial loss, and then damage to the reputation of the students. So when students publish in those kind of journal, they stick there forever. Once published, they will stick in the index. So when you go for any job interview, the interviewer saw a journal that has been removed from Scopus, for example, because of their predatory nature. Imagine what message they send to the interviewer. Of course, it's not good, right? And that is the reason why you should not try. Yeah. And then loss of public confidence in scientific research. Now, because of these predatory journals, they publish all sorts of scientific paper, regardless of their merit. There are a lot of fake science that, in fact, there were one case in 2012 or 2014, I'm not mistaken. They have an operation, they call it sting operation. There's one researcher, one postdoc researcher actually sent a paper that is themed with Star Wars. There are a lot of species named after the character in Star Wars. And guess what? That paper is published. Of course, it has been retracted because of that. So they can go as bad as that. They can publish a paper supposedly scientific based on fictional character. So predatory journals, don't even think about it. They can be as worse as that. Yeah. So now, because the BIOS list is no longer available, you won't know which journal is fake, which journal is predatory. There's no more reference. But there are a few ways that you can recognize, okay, predatory journals or potential predatory journals. And these are the things that I would like to advocate to postgraduate students. Yeah. Even though you see that journal still in Scopus, doesn't mean that you should publish with that, because a lot of them, once they get into Scopus, they start receiving payment and they publish everything. So those are the targets that I want you to be aware of. There are a few, so you have to be careful. Now, how do you recognize these potential predatory journals? Now, these are the tips, yeah, the criteria that a potential predatory journal would have. Yeah. Okay, number one, they guarantee acceptance. Frankly speaking, no journal can guarantee anything until after the peer review. Yeah. So some of them don't even have peer review, and even if they have very low standard. When you get back your peer review, they just say yes, no, a little bit of language correction with nothing related to the content. So that is not a good review, for your information. A good review should touch the content, critically comment whatever the science, the validity of evidence or the interpretation of the data inside your manuscript. That should be one of the things that people have in a proper peer review. Yeah. Okay, number two, they will always impose a mandatory and sometimes hidden article publication charge. And there's a trick, you know. When they impose this article publication charge, they do not charge a lot. They will hover around 1,000 to 2,000. That is their usually price tag, because why? It's affordable. Even postgraduate students can afford it. So you pay 2,000, publish straight away, no problem. Now, many of these of the so-called predatory journals, they may even charge higher, but it's not really an indicator that will truly pinpoint a predatory nature. Yeah, they will always ask for your money. Yeah? Okay, number three, they accept all articles despite not within the journal scope of publication. So that is a telltale sign. If a journal is about physics, about science and technology, they cannot publish an article related to social science or management. That is for sure. You cannot cross over. They have to be publishing articles within the specific limit of their scope. They cannot publish more than that. And why this happened? Because predatory journals, they don't care. They just want your money. So even if your journal is about social science, they will even publish your social science paper in science and technology journal. Yeah. and that has happened before. Yeah. Again, number 4, poor English quality in articles and websites. So that is a telltale sign. That means no editing at all. Yeah. And then the next one is unclear journal ownership or publisher, because why? Who's behind this so-called journal? They should be publisher. But when this publisher wants only your money, they are not publisher. They are actually business people, or maybe scammers altogether. So usually they won't let you know who they are. They just put somebody else's name, or maybe they pretend to be a reputable journal or reputable academician. So that would be one. And then their website is either unavailable or differs than those available in Scopus or websites. Now, sometimes when you want to find a journal, there are several websites. If you find that, then stop, because those are the indication that one of them might be a fake journal. So dig deeper, you'll find out which one is the legit one, the original one, which one is legit, and which one is a false one. So be careful. And usually the fake ones are the one who is committing those predatory nature. Yeah. And then for the fake journals, usually they are predatory and they won't use institutional email, because they don't want you to check the real person. They were going to falsely represent a person which is respected and reputable in a research field. And they create it. I mean, nowadays you don't need to be too troublesome to create a Gmail, for example. Yeah, I can also create a Gmail based on somebody's name, but that is not that person, right? So yeah, so next time when you see Gmail, be careful. Okay, so I still have a little bit, but okay. So the other one is that usually this journal will going to aggressively promote their journal papers, as you may have received it in your email. They say your work is very valuable and they want to invite your papers. Yes, you may engage them, but check thoroughly. Yeah. And then sometimes even their location also is questionable. When you look carefully at the location, is somebody's house. That might also happen. So for extra tip, if you don't have the time to check everything, don't worry. Just go to these two portals, Schemago portal or ResearchGate, and type the journal name. Yeah, make sure the ISSN is exactly what you intended, and then look down. Yeah, because at the bottom of the page later they have comments related to that same journal. And this is how I found out one of the fake journals in Schemago portal. There are several victims who falls prey to this predatory journal, and they complain inside Schemago portal's forum. So that is a telltale sign. It's not really a solid evidence, but I dig deeper and I found out, yeah, that is indeed that was indeed the case, the fake journal. Yeah. So you can check that out. If you don't have the time to check other things, this is the easiest way to find out whether the journal is fake or if it's predatory. So the conclusion is that I know everybody have a KPI to meet, but rather than achieving the KPI using the dishonorable means, you might as well just take a hit, be honest, and publish according to the rules and the ethics as set aside by the scholarly publication. Because why? Once you have committed the publication misconduct, it sticks with you. You are forever nervous because time may catch up, technology may catch up, and it might bite you back. So, I mean, the worst case scenario is once you have taken a certain time to get promoted to a certain level, then come this case. How ironic is that? So don't even start, yeah? Be honest, publish, and then you'll get there sooner or later. Yeah? So other than that, if you have doubt, always ask. Ask the supervisor. Always discuss with the co-supervisor or maybe the superior whether that journal has an issue. And I would welcome any people from UITM to come and discuss with me, because we also would like to know if there's any issue with a certain journal so that we take note. Yeah. And then the next one is, if you're guilty of misconduct, stop right away, admit it, and come back, do the correction. So there's always a way for you to come back. Once you're committed, don't think that you are there and you're waiting to rot. No, you just need to stop and then do correction. Yeah. And then the other one, which is quite common. If you know somebody have done it, report. But first, report back to the person who committed. Ask them to stop. Ask them to correct. If they still refuse to correct, then only you report to the boss. Yeah, that is a proper way to remind people that it is wrong. You should stop, and yeah, just take action, I would say. So if you are concerned on where to publish, UITM have 50 over journals for you to publish, ranging from all sorts of field of study. And postgraduate students need to publish, at least in my site. Here you are. We have 25 journals where you can publish in any one of your journals. We also have 3 Scopus journals and 1 Web of Science under ESCI. So help yourself, have a look. And if you want more information, you can always go to this journal portal, journal.uitm.edu.my, to find more information and submission link to all of these journals. Yeah. So with that, I thank you for your attention. Over to you, Dr. Eli.
Thank you very much, Dr. Yong. Okay, that was a very interesting, very useful sharing, okay, for all our viewers. So now we are into our question and answer session, right? Okay, can I just read to Dr. Yong some of the questions, maybe not all. The first question that I would like to read is the same topic of research considered duplicate publication because I'm expanding my MA research?
Okay.
How's that?
Okay, I'll answer that question. Duplicate publication is characterized by one thing, the content. Yeah? The content, if the data is exactly the same, that is one sign of duplicated publication. So even though there are 2 papers written with different language, one in Mandarin, for example, the other one in English or maybe in Malay, they are still counted as duplicated publication even with different language, but they have the same data.
Right. So that means if it has been published, for example, in Bahasa Malaysia, having the same data and then you just translate to English, then that would be unethical, right, Doctor?
That is correct. And another example, I know and this is quite popular among students, they want to go to conference and they publish proceeding. And then after that, they want to use the same data to publish a journal. Previously it's acceptable, but now, not nowadays. It is not allowed. Yeah, you cannot.
So it has to be entirely different.
Correct. And in order to get away with this kind of duplicated publication, it has to be significantly different. Now, let's say a proceeding might have a small amount of data, but a journal, you have to significantly add more data compared to proceeding, then that is allowed.
Yeah. Okay, thank you, Doctor. Okay, another question. Can the Turnitin be used several times to check the thesis paper?
The answer is definitely yes. The only thing that I'm concerned is whether or not the supervisor knows how to set how to determine the setting, because a lot of students, they are stuck when they submit because they submit to the repository inside Turnitin. You cannot do that. If you submit to a repository, third party, for example, the examiner or maybe the journal publisher, when they want to check your plagiarism, they will automatically receive high similarity index. So remember, supervisor, do not agree to submit to the repository inside Turnitin.
Yeah, I've seen also cases like that. It's difficult to ask the admin to delete, right? And I think sometimes you cannot delete the earlier submission, so that can be a problem.
It can be done. It can be done, but you have to ask the university admin in HUL.
Right.
That is the only person who is allowed to do that.
Yeah. So the easiest thing is do not send to repository.
Yes.
And then you can use it time and time again.
Yes.
Okay, another question, Doctor. Can we have few critical tips when paraphrasing in order to avoid similarity?
Okay, I personally do not like the idea of paraphrasing. I would usually ask my students to use their own word, digest the content, and then give me their own sentence. I would never agree to paraphrasing because paraphrasing, even right now I have 10 theses of paraphrase a lot of sections. So it took me several days to read their theses. It's so hard to read. But if you still need to paraphrase, the one that I would agree would be use your own word lah. Don't paraphrase lah, I would say.
Right. Okay, maybe another question, Doctor. Here, I'm interested to know more about corresponding authors. You mentioned they could have two corresponding authors. The question is, does this apply to all journal publishers or this apply to UITM only?
Yeah, this applies to all publishers.
All right. Okay. Can co-supervisor be co-author if they just proofread the journal?
If co-supervisor should have at least supervise the student. So in that context, I would assume that the co-supervisor also contributed their ideas to the point where they have those papers. So I don't think co-supervisor is only allowed to proofread. There should be more contribution coming from the co-supervisor, and because of that, they should be the co-author. If
Right.
the co-supervisor failed to co-supervise, maybe the corresponding author should not include them.
And maybe the student can also discuss with the main supervisor, isn't it? So what
Yes.
is the best course of action? Right,
Yes.
I think one last question, Dr. Yong. Muhammad from Faculty of Sports Science and Recreation, I'd like your advice on how is the proper way to move forward with a manuscript that has been submitted to a journal but for over 3 months and has not been reviewed or updated until this day.
Okay, well, if Muhammad, you still want to publish in that journal, give the chief editor a reminder. Okay, if you still want to publish. But if you are in a hurry, just send them an email requesting a withdrawal. Yeah, requesting a withdrawal. Then after that, you can just submit to any other journals. Because some publishers, even when you have sent them the withdrawal request, they still don't respond. But at least you have already sent the withdrawal request, so you can move on.
Yeah. Okay, Dr. Yong, I think that's all the questions that we have. Let me see. Oh, okay. Do we have time, Dr. Mas, for a few more? Okay, just a reminder, we will share the form for attendance at the end of the session. So please stay until the end. And also, we are going to share the slides and recording at our UITM IPSIS Facebook. Okay.
Maybe we can take 2 questions. Is it
Two
okay?
questions, yeah?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, one question. I would like to know how can I check plagiarism via Turnitin without enrolling a classroom? Is that possible?
I would like to know this question coming from a student or from a staff.
I have no idea. Anonymous.
I'll just answer. Okay, if this question coming from a staff, once you log in, there is a button called quick submit. So you can just press that button and quickly submit without having to create a classroom. But if you're a student, then you have to ask the supervisor to create a classroom for you. Then only the student can submit.
Okay. All right. One last question. How about extended manuscript? Is it considered as duplicate paper?
Extended manuscript is very condensed, usually just 4 to 6 pages of just data with very minimal interpretation. That also count as if the same data is used for journal publication, yeah, that also counts. But once again, because extended abstract, they are so small and so condensed, if you make a journal, I mean, the difference will be quite significant. So there shouldn't be any issue, I would say.
Okay. Okay, thank you very much, Dr. Yong, for a great sharing. Okay, so we are going to move to our next speaker. I
Okay,
hope to see you again, Dr. Yong, maybe next webinar series. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank
I
you
would
very
like,
much, Dr. Yong.
I'd like to request permission to leave right now.
Yeah, sure, sure.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Okay.
Bye.
All right. Okay, so now we are moving to our next speaker. Okay, Dr. Amira Abdul Rahman. Let me introduce you to her. Okay, she obtained her PhD degree in molecular medicine from UKM Medical Molecular Biology Institute. She is both the coordinator of research ethics at RMC and also the secretary of Research Ethics Committee. She is a senior lecturer at the Department of Biochemistry and Molecular Medicine, Faculty of Medicine, UITM Sungai Buloh Campus, Selangor. Her responsibilities involve teaching molecular medicine, basic biochemistry and genetic inheritance to preclinical medical students, and are currently heading research in colorectal and glioma cancer, funded by MAGNA from the National Cancer Council Malaysia and from the Ministry of Higher Education Malaysia. So without further delay, everyone, please join me to welcome Dr. Amira. Dr. Amira, the screen is yours. Thank you.
Assalamualaikum. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay. Just stop me if let's say my voice is has some disturbance because tadi I can hear Dr. Yong's voice. It's a bit tersekat-sekat ya. Can you see my slides?
Yes, we can. Can you just put it on slideshow, Doctor? So far,
Yes,
so good. No interruption, no disconnection. Okay.
All right.
That's nice.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much, Associate Professor Dr. Ellie, for the kind introduction. So, my topic for today is on research ethics application procedures, the do's and don'ts. Because previously, I think I have delivered the talk extensively on the guidelines for ethics application procedure. So this time around, I will share some do's and don'ts that you can do when you are this is this organization chart has Dr. Yong just now, where we are from the Ethics and Publication Unit, Research Management Center RMC, and Dr. Yong is the head and I am the coordinator of Research Ethics. And below is the secretariat, the REC secretariat, which is Puan Adila, our executive officer. She's the one who will be answering all your questions if you call the office, or Puan Amy and Puan Ainul. Okay, Puan Hamizah is from the publication subunit, and Puan Shahida is also the publication subunit. All right. Okay, so for today's content, there will be about 5 main contents that I'll be presenting to you. The first one is on the principles of ethical research, and why. Next is why do you need to apply for research ethics, and the application procedures in brief, the categories of review and the elements of review, and finally the examples of written applications. Why the applications are written during the first screening. Okay. All right. So this is the 7 main principles that you need to know to guide you to conduct an ethical research. So as you can see here, the first one is social and clinical value, and the second one, scientific validity, fair subject selection, favorable risk-benefit ratio, an independent review, informed consent, and respect for potential and enrolled subjects. So when we discuss on ethics in any research field, it must be rooted in the policy documents, which is the Nuremberg Code, the Declaration of Helsinki, and the Belmont Report. The ones that I have highlighted is the ones that I would like to emphasize in this sharing session. This is important because these are the ones that will be looked at when the reviewers review your applications. Okay, so number one, the social and clinical value, that which means every research study is designed to answer specific questions. So your answer should be important enough to justify asking people or recruiting people to accept some risk or inconveniences for others. So in other words, your research question should contribute to scientific understanding of health or improve our ways to prevent, treating, or caring for people with a given disease. That is for health sciences studies, or to justify exposing participants to the risk and burden of research. Okay, that would be for social science studies and perhaps business and management studies. So when you draft up a proposal or develop a proposal, you need to take into account these criteria. And the next one is scientific validity. So that means this refers to the methodology of your study. The study should be designed in a way that can be understandable to answer important research questions in your study. Okay. And invalid research is unethical because it is a waste of resources and exposes people to risk for no purpose. Okay. And the next one is fair subject selection. Fair subject selection meaning that what is the primary basis for recruiting participants? There should be some justification for recruiting your participants or your subjects. Okay, not because of any vulnerability or privilege or other unrelated factors. Contohnya, for example, you wanted to recruit individuals that only understood English language. But what is the reason behind that? Or only understood bahasa Melayu. What is the reason? What is the justification for recruiting such subjects? Okay. And then next one is the favorable risk-benefit ratio, which is usually in many researches, there is a certain uncertainty about the degree of risks and benefits which associated with the, especially in the clinical research study. The risk usually may be trivial or serious, transient or long-term. And sometimes for social science studies, the risks can be psychological, economic or social. So you need to determine your risk. There must be some risk in your study even though it is minimal. Okay, so that is important. And why am I stressing on the ethical issues in social research? Because I think for health sciences, most of the applicants are are already aware of the risks for their studies. It's because the risks is actually you can see whether it is a physical risk, or for example, for drug studies, the drugs may bring risk to the participants, but for social science research, they don't know whether their type of study bring any risk to the participants. So here I have listed some of them. For example, harm to participants. It doesn't mean harm to participants. The harm is only physical, but it can be a mental harm, mental risk, for example, stress, anguish, embarrassment, resentment at being labeled. So that is some of the examples of harm to participants. And the next one is lack of informed consent. Lack of informed consent, meaning that there are sometimes vulnerable population, for example, children or mentally challenged people may not be able to give their consent. So, how do you deal with this issue? You need to state in your research methodology, and you need to state in the informed consent form clearly, so that your participants can understand what they are getting themselves into. And then next is the invasion of privacy, anonymity. Respondent should not be identified in any way. Okay, deception. Deception meaning that deceiving respondents and participants about the nature of your research, or you may hide some information from your participants. Okay, and then number 5, the final one is limited reuse. Limited reuse means any identifiable personal data collection for specific research purposes cannot be automatically used for other research, because sometimes I have encountered a few researchers that feels like it's a waste of sources, data collection, if they do not proceed to the next, a whole new study using their previous data collected in the first study. But that doesn't mean they can use the study from the previous study. They must usually obtain reconsent, whether to obtain reconsent or whether to de-identify the data collected completely, where they cannot identify at all the data collected to a certain individual. So they must de-identify the data. So that is up for discussion. And the new challenges, ethics in internet research. For example, currently there is a new era for social science research in using blogs, data from blogs, list serves, discussion groups, email, chat rooms, instant messaging, Twitter, and so on. So while this is an exciting area for new research, but ethical and data quality issues need careful consideration. For example, you need to ask yourself whether are these online postings public, and therefore informed consent is not required, because most of the researchers thinks that way. Because the data is public, therefore they do not need to obtain consent from the individual, and is lacking a form of covert non-participation. And how does that link up with informed consent? And how can a researcher protect the confidentiality of an individual when using what they've posted online? So you need to ask all these questions. If you have any doubts, if you are interested to know about the ethical decision making and internet research, you can refer to the link I have provided here. This is a good read for all social science researchers who wants to do a research using internet data. Okay. So the first thing you need to do is, when you develop a proposal, you need to think about how would your proposal explicitly addresses the points of ethical research above. Some of the questions that I've listed here, you need to ask yourself, what might be some key questions to the research that you should explore, and what methods would you use and why? Okay, why? There must be some justification on you using that methods to answer the objectives of your research. And what potential ethical problems could you identify in planning and undertaking a research project in this area? There must be some risks involved, whether it's very minimal or high risk. And how would you build up trust with your participants? And what would you use the research for? Number 5 is mainly you need to identify the benefit of your research. The benefit of your research to the community usually, or to our country, or to the individuals that you are doing the research. Okay, next question. Sometimes the students ask, why do I need to apply research ethics approval? So this is the answer to that. It is a requirement to assess for to human participants, especially in healthcare. Okay, a requirement to comply to obtain funding nowadays, and a requirement to publish research. I think this one has been covered by Dr. Yong just now. Okay, on the national grant guidelines, they demand research ethics approval. If you can see inside the guideline for FRGS, where they state that the approval from the Research Ethics Committee needs to be submitted together with your reports, your first reports. Okay. And then ethics approval requirement in national grant application. Okay, this is same. FRGS, RESA or LRGS, any KPT grants, the approval should be, approval of ethics should be obtained within 6 months of grant approval. So it must be provided when submitting the first progress report, as you can see here, proof of ethical committee approval. Yeah, they require you to upload the proof. And academic responsibility, ethics in journal publication, where the journal requires you to provide an ethical approval code when publishing. Here, I've listed a few journals from the social science study aspects, especially, for example, European Management Journal, where informed consent and patient details are needed, and then educational research, law and philosophy, and test. For certain studies lah, which involves human. Okay. While in UITM, this approval is mandatory on human subjects. Okay, mandatory, but it is in our garis panduan, dasar garis panduan and pelaksanaan etika pendidikan melibatkan manusia. Alright. You can read more on the document. You can go to our website. We have provided the link to these documents. Yeah? All right. So moving on to the next part, which is the application procedures. So who needs to apply? Who needs to apply? The ones that needs to apply for ethics approval in UITM is, of course, UITM researchers, UITM students, and non-UITM researchers, which is the external parties conducting research on UITM staff or students or in UITM premises. And the examples of projects requiring ethics approval is, of course, as you know by now, human participants, the use of human products. For example, you wanted to test a lotion on humans, on your participants, or you wanted to use test a product, a drinking product. For example, you have made a nutritional drink, and you wanted to test it on your participants. Then you must require ethics approval before that. And studies that may potentially impact human participants. It doesn't matter whether physically or mentally. Okay. What about animal studies? Because some of the students, some of the staff has asked me about animal studies. Animal studies for UITM REC, we do not process animal studies. That is under the purview of UITM care. All right. So when do I apply for research approval? The best time is we recommend the applicants to apply 2 months before your expected data collection. 2 months before, yeah. So it is recommended that you apply while preparing your research proposal, which includes undergraduate, postgraduate research. And REC approval, this is very important, must be obtained before data collection, because if you have done your data collection, then we cannot give approval anymore. Okay. So it is best to apply 2 months before data collection to allow time for us to process. Let's say you have obtained a bit earlier, meaning that you have obtained your ethics approval a month after you have applied, then it is good. You can straight away start your data collection. But please give us ample time to process the application, yeah? And the categories of review, we have 3 currently. The first one is full board for more than minimal risk, which requires presentation at REC meeting. And the next one is expedited minimal risk. Expedited review does not require presentation at our meeting, the REC meeting. And finally, exemption from ethical review. Sometimes there is some journals that requires exemption code to publish the research, your paper. So before you start your data collection or your study, please find out whether your research requires an exemption code. You can look at the journals in your field and probably look at the similar publication, similar studies that has published in that journal. Do they require exemption code? Okay. And the determination of the type of review. This criteria may include but not limited to the following list. I've listed for your guidance, but it is not limited to this. So, for example, expedited review, as you know, poses no more than minimal risk, and the study does not involve a vulnerable population. For example, orang asal or patients, cancer patients, and any vulnerable population, yeah? And the study does not involve the collection of stigmatizing information. And the study uses anonymized or archived samples, or expedited review can be of a review for continuing clinical trials that do not involve further recruitment of participants, or a review of studies previously classified under expedited review, and study protocol amendments, because sometimes you need to do amendments to your protocol, to your methodology, even though you have obtained approval from us. So that can be expedited. It must be reviewed as well, but can be expedited. Okay. And next is full board review. This one, research that involves usually clinical trial, is a full board review. Clinical trial for the use of new drug, treatment, or procedures. And then the study which involves randomized controlled trial and intervention, and research which involves questionnaires, can be full board if the questionnaires is given to vulnerable groups, or your survey questions imposes sensitive questions. And genetic or genomic studies and other studies that are not fulfilling expedited review criteria. And for example, exemption. So researchers, for example, monitoring program, consumer satisfaction, program evaluation, and so on, that do not involve human participants or subject human materials or human data, are technically exempt from review. But it is subjected to expedited review at the level of chairperson. Let's say you have submitted your application for exemption, but when your application is reviewed, the reviewer feels that there is, to some extent, risks, just a minimal risk, but needs to be reviewed for ethical approval. Then it will be forwarded for expedited review. Okay, the flow chart. The flow chart of RC approval in UITM, it starts with you, the applicants. You complete and submit your relevant forms to the JPF or JPN. JPN is your research committee in the faculty or in the branch. So this is the timeline for them to process, which is 14 working days upon your submission. And after 14 days or less, the RC Secretariat will send your application forms to us, the RC Secretariat, and our Secretariat will screen your form first. Okay, this is 7 working days or less. 7 working days or less. Screen your forms. Let's say if your forms are incomplete, then we will revert back to the applicant. Okay, if your forms is complete, then we will assign reviewers to review your applications. They are given 7 working days to review your applications, and they will give a decision which is approved or conditional approval, full approval or conditional approval. Okay, if let's say your study is more than minimal risk, after reviewed by the reviewer, the reviewer thinks that your study poses high risk, so then your application needs to be forwarded to the second flowchart. Yeah? Second flowchart, meaning that after the screening of your forms, we will assign a primary reviewer, and the reviewer will review your forms, and then you need to wait for our meeting, REC meeting, which is the 3rd Tuesday of each month, to present your application to the meeting, to the board. Okay, so you can look at our meeting calendar. You can refer to the link for the meeting calendar every month. And then after the meeting, the Secretariat will issue a letter to the applicant on the decision within 14 working days or less. Yeah? Okay, so you need to look at the terms of ethics approval submission below here, all incomplete forms will be written. So please ensure that your forms are complete. All the sections are filled up. Okay, and only approved application by JPF or JPN will be submitted to REC. Right? Okay, I think I have given the talk on this form, so I'll be scanning through the forms really quickly. Okay, the applicants required to fill all sections, but in the red box, as you can see here, there is the name of study coordinator. This section is for clinical trials only, but please do not leave blank. You can put NA or dash, not available, and tick the appropriate option here, below here. Okay, so you can read through the forms. You can fill in whether your research has research funding or not, and then the research details. Okay, please tick these boxes. Whether if you can tick more than one. If your research involves questionnaire and then your research involves observation, you can tick more than one box. Okay, you need to briefly describe the study and then include the references cited in the background section. You must include your references. And then objectives. We suggest for the objectives to be numbered. Okay, and use measurable verbs. This is usually for health sciences studies. And then briefly describe your the benefits, the social benefits of your research to the study participants, researchers, stakeholders, and so on. Okay, this is important. I would like to highlight number 5, the expected date of initial data collection. The date should be after REC approval. So this is where you must allow at least 2 months interval from the date of complete document submission. Okay, I give an example. Okay, for example, you have submitted your forms, your completed forms in June, the 1st of June. The expected date of initial data collection should be 2 months from June, which is August. Okay. And the location of the research, please be specific. Not only state UITM, but please state where in UITM. Okay, because we have so many faculties and branches, you need to be specific. Okay, on the research design and methodology, please don't be too brief. There are applicants that have submitted to us number 7, the methodology. It is very brief and the reviewer cannot understand the research or methodology that will be done, that will be imposed to the participants. So that will be a problem. Probably your application might require major amendments. So please be careful on this part. Yeah. Okay. So sample size, describe how you get your sample size and how you calculate your sample size and the research flowchart and so on. If, let's say, you have no funding for your research, do not leave blank this part. Please at least put not available, not available, NA, but do not leave blank. If you leave blank, it will be considered as incomplete. Okay. So the first part, this is to be filled in by staff or postgraduate students. If, let's say, an undergraduate student applied for ethics application, the name for the section for undergraduate students should be here, not the first one, not in the principal researchers column. Yeah. Okay. So the final one, the part E, this needs to be signed and dated by the chair or co-chair of JPN or JPF. They will recommend whether your research is minimal risk or more than minimal risk. Okay, the research classification form RC3, this is for you to answer. I think there are about 23 questions in this form. You have to answer all. Let's say if you answer yes to one of these questions, you need to briefly describe why it is yes. For example, number 1, if you answer yes, your subjects are children under 18 years old, briefly describe what is the range of the age for your subjects, for example. Okay, and what else? Okay, for example, if you tick yes for number 6, does any of the data collected have the potential to cause discomfort to your subjects? Then you must briefly describe how will it cause discomfort and how can you overcome that. All right. Okay, you can read through the questions later. Okay, for RC4, participant information sheet, this is also important. Usually, you have to include both Malay and English versions, unless stated otherwise in your methodology that your study population does not understand English, for example. So that is why you submit only the Malay version. But you must justify why are you recruiting participants that understood only Malay language. Okay, but otherwise the default is you must include both Malay and English versions. And please ensure all versions carry the same meaning. And your information sheet does not include technical jargon, which means too scientific for your participants to understand, and do not include citations because this information sheet is to be given to your participants. So citation is not necessary. Citation is not necessary. All right. So this is an example of our information sheet lah, which you have to fill up. Right. Briefly explain about the benefit of research, and then your participant in research, the research procedure, not too long, but using non-expert language so that your participants can understand what they are getting themselves into. Right? Okay. So another important thing that I would like to highlight is under confidentiality, please provide your name and direct telephone numbers. Okay? Provide the researcher's name and direct telephone numbers, not your office number, not your home number, but your direct cell phone number. And this consent form, because many of the applicants have asked me whether they need to fill in this form or not. This form, you don't need to fill in. This is for your participants later lah, during your study when you wanted to collect your data. The participants will fill in this form. So leave this, just leave this form as it is. You do not need to fill in this. All right, for RC5, the checklist for applicants, this is just a checklist for you so that you can look through whether you have missed any of the documents when you have submitted to us. You can read through. This part is for non-clinical trials. So for non-clinical trial studies, you do not need to complete this part. And the signature, the supervisor's signature and the applicant's signature. Okay, there is an additional form which is the assent form. The assent form, this one is required if your participants is aged 18 and below. Okay, so you need to fill out this form for your minor participants. It is similar to the participant information sheet just now, but it uses much simpler language and age-appropriate language, which can be understood by the minors. Okay. All right, this is the assent form. As you can see here, the questions asked is in a very simple language. For example, what is the project about? This is the introduction of the project. And why do I need to be in this project? What should I do in this project? What should I do means the procedure to be done on your participants, and what will happen to me in the project. So you have to briefly describe this to your minor participants. Yeah. All right. And let's say your participants cannot write or read. For example, your participants is age 7 years old. So you can take their thumbprint in the box, and there must be a witness for minor that is unable to read, or some research that covers sensitive issues. There must be a witness when you are taking consent from the minor participants. Okay, so that's it for application forms. You need to fill up the RC2, 3, 4 or 12 and the checklist. So basically you need to fill up RC2 and RC4. The other forms, RC3 and 5, is like a checklist and the questions that you need to answer, just yes or no questions. Okay, reasons for returning the first application during the application during the first screening by REC Secretariat. Okay, there are a few reasons. I didn't have the time to translate it to English, so I'll just read out for REC2. Usually, why your application is returned is because you did not put the date of data collection appropriately. For example, you have submitted in June, but you put the date of your data collection in let's say 30 June. So the time is too short for us to process your application. So we will return it back to you to revise the date of data collection. All right. And then next is some of the applicants did not complete the flow chart. You must complete the flow chart, and your flow chart must refer to the methodology that you have explained in number 7. So it must reflect to the methodology that you have explained in number 7. Yeah, please take note on that. And then there is no signature from the Jawatankuasa Pendidikan Fakulti or your research committee lah. No signature, or it is signed by your supervisor. So we will return back the forms to you. And then next is maklumat pendidikan. Maklumat pendidikan, this is where you must tick what is your research scope. Is it questionnaire? Is it clinical research? And you must tick that part. And some of the applicants did not complete all of this part, and the secretariat will send the application back to the applicants lah, to be completed. They will not proceed for review. And some of the applicants did not submit the 2 versions of participants information sheet. For example, Bahasa Melayu, and they just submitted the English version but no Malay version. So that your application forms will be returned back to you. Okay, and as I've mentioned before, there is no name, there is no contact number in the confidentiality part. That will also be returned back to you. Right? Okay, so I think you can read through the elements of review. What elements of review is looked into by your reviewers. Okay, the most important thing is the scientific merit of your study, whether your background or your introduction, your literature review, justified what needs to be done in your research, and your research objectives, whether your research designs can answer your research objectives, and so on. I think you can read through this. This is the part where your reviewers, the ethical reviewers will review your proposal. Okay, the reviewer's decision, there is 4 categories, which is approved, conditional approval, or represent, or not approved due to ethical issues. Okay, usually most of the applicants will obtain conditional approval, which means that they are the study is recommended to approve with corrections, which is minor or major amendments. Minor, we give them 1 month, and major, we will give them 3 months. In the event of conditional approval, applicant is required to submit the amended documents to REC Secretariat, and then you may use the REC cover letter template, which you can obtain from our website, and attach supporting documents if necessary, and please highlight the corrections in the relevant forms. Okay, let's say that you have not submitted your amended documents within the time given, then you need to submit a fresh application unless otherwise instructed by the chairman. Okay. Okay, this is an example of the reviewer's comment lah, here. As you can see here, most of the comment will be given in the experimental design and methodology. This is for health science research. There is no clear description of the procedure. Okay, and the sample size is not described. The applicant did not describe how they come about 10 samples. No calculation is provided, and then the flow chart is not provided. Okay, and the next study is the same thing. Only the research design was described, but no elaboration on the methodology and procedures. How will the study be done? Okay, this is very important. Yeah? If you have addressed this earlier, then probably your application can be straight away approved, inshallah. Okay. On the inclusion and exclusion criteria, it is not clear, and the sample size, as usual, they did not put how they come about the sample size, no calculation, right? All right. So it's the same thing within the same issue. The inclusion criteria is very vague. The problem statement needs to be improved relating to the research objectives. Okay, no specific. Okay, on the statistical analysis, it should be more specific on what tests that you wanted to be conducted, not too general. All right. So for social science or business and management research, this is an example of the reviewer's comment. Location, for example, location where your study or project needs to be carried out. You need to, sometimes you have to justify why you wanted to carry out the study in a specific location. So on the experimental design, inclusion criteria and sample size, it's the same as the health sciences study. All right. Okay. Some needs to improve on the problem statement and the objective, because sometimes the title is different. The objective that you have given does not answer the title given. So each of the section must relate to each other. Your problem statement, your objectives must answer the problem statement, yeah? And the expected benefits are not mentioned at all. It only repeats the objective. So this cannot be. All right. Okay, so I think that is all. REC4, sometimes the REC4 is too lengthy. difficult to understand. So you must write it short and simple sentences for your participants to understand. And please don't include citation in your subject information sheet. All right. Okay, I think I am coming towards the end of my session. The RC application process involves here, it starts with you, the applicant, and then you will submit your application to your research committee, and then the research committee will process your application and submit your complete application to us, REC Secretariat, where we will screen, assign reviewers, or return to applicant when it is not completed, and return to applicant for correction. And finally, provide the approval letter, and we will email the approval letter to both of the RC Secretariat and the applicant. Okay, just to share with you of the total of applications that we've received until early June this year, it amounted to hundreds per month. So please give us ample time to process your application by submitting early to us, at least 2 months before your data collection, right? And you can submit your forms. Usually, previously, the applicants can submit themselves. I'm not sure what is the practice in each of your faculties, but usually the research committee secretariat will submit the forms to us via email or Google form. And you can look at the RC forms in this link provided. All the forms are there. You can download it, and please use the latest version of application forms, which is revision 2020-21. In summary, please ensure that all your forms are completed and signed by members of your research team, your supervisor, or the JPN, JPF section. And before you submit to REC, please ensure that there is no major grammatical errors, or else your forms will be returned to the applicants for amendments, because major grammatical errors, sometimes the research objectives or your problem statement might not be understood by the reviewers. All right, so any inquiries, you can contact our secretariat, the REC secretariat, which is Puan Adila. You can contact for this via email or using the phone number stated here. But during this time, PKP, I think our staff is not in the office, so you may just email us, or you can directly email me for any questions. Okay, I would like to acknowledge our previous chair and deputy chair, Professor Nora Shikin and Professor Datin Hajar Sarina, because some of the slides that I've presented just now is taken from their slides previously. Okay, so that is all from me. So back to you, Dr. Ellie.
Thank you very much, Dr. Amira. I think that is very useful. Okay, very clear presentation of what needs to be done, and also the tips, the do's and the don'ts. Okay, so let us go through some of the questions. Here I'm going to ask, there's this one question. I have received grant from my research. If I need to use FFPE samples from diagnostic sample, do I still need to apply for ethics? I suppose this is on the science-based field, Doctor.
Okay. Right. So that means that the samples, is it collected during the study, or it is from the previous study, the samples?
It's not mentioned here.
Okay, usually for FFPE samples, you still need to obtain ethics approval because some of the samples, if it is anonymized, then it's okay. But please apply for ethics approval because we are worried that if the samples may be identified to a certain patients or individuals, you know, because the samples is from a patient usually. For samples like that, you need to at least obtain consent from the patient beforehand. For the samples to be preserved or taken for research, usually the researchers need to obtain consent from the patients. Okay, they still need to obtain consent from the patients. Yeah.
All right. Okay. I already get ethics approval with the condition minimal risk, and I have done amendment and emailed the document on 27 April. However, as I asked REC, they said the reviewer does not give any answer yet. So perhaps how you can respond. This is regarding taking quite some time to reach to a conclusion, Doctor.
Okay. So that one, I think I need to check the title, and then you can provide me your title and the name of the applicant. Then we can check the timeline process for that, because sometimes it is you know, because of the backlog, because of the total of applications coming in to us, the process may not be according to the SOP, but we must check whether the delay is in the reviewer's part or in our part. But we can assist the applicant. You can email me directly your title and your name, and we can check to speed up the process.
Okay, thank you, Doctor. Okay, another question. I have received the approval letter to conduct survey. At that time, we only focus on specific state, Klang Valley. However, we are in MCO3 period and change our location to nationwide. So what should I do? They have already received the approval letter.
Okay, so you have made some amendments to the methodology, which is the location. You can write to us by stating what amendments that you have done to your protocol, and then we will forward it to the reviewer, and the reviewer will review your amendments lah. Usually, if it is very minor, you can get approval in no time. But if the amendment is major, you probably have to resubmit your application. But for location wise, I think it is minor. So just submit your amendment, just inform us, and we will process the amendments and give it to the reviewers to review.
Okay, right. I also have here questions for Turnitin. I think I will reserve that for later. I will go straight to those relating to ethics first. Yeah. Okay. If I already obtained ethics approval from MOH, I suppose that is Ministry of Health. Okay. Yes. For example, do I still need to apply ethics from UITM?
Okay, that depends. Are you a postgraduate student registered under UITM? If yes, you need to apply ethics approval from UITM. And will you be doing your research in UITM? If yes, definitely you have to apply ethics from us lah. Even though you have obtained from MOH.
Right. Okay, this one is regarding meta-analysis studies. Is it necessary to fill up the I think not participant, the approval form?
Meta-analysis studies, which only involves analysis of papers or that.
Yeah, I should think so. Yes, something like systematic review.
Systematic review, okay. For systematic review, usually it is exempted from review. So if let's say you need an exemption code to publish your systematic review, you can apply to us. If let's say you do not need the exemption code, then you don't have to apply to us.
Okay, right. If my thesis, PhD thesis, do not apply for research ethic form, for all data collection. Will that affect my submission for final thesis when it is complete later?
Okay, that part I think Dr. Swahili can answer that part, because previously the previous Dean of IPSIS have stated that if the PG student which conducts research that involves human participants do not apply for ethical approval, they cannot graduate. But I am not sure on the current guidelines. What is the current guidelines? Maybe they can ask the IPSIS lah.
Okay, right. Normal social questionnaire survey. I think we will face problem to ask for IC number. Would that be unethical, perhaps? The question is asking.
For IC number, okay. For that means that you can identify the participants, right? So you must definitely apply for ethics approval. You can ask for their IC number, but you must state in your methodology how you are going to keep your data confidential. And later, when you wanted to analyze the data, how do you de-identify the data? There is a method to do that. So you must state that clearly in the methodology lah. But
okay, this one for the research only involving online database for systematic review and meta-analysis. Is there any suggestion? What should we fill in data allocation part?
pardon, Dr. Ellie, can you please repeat it? Because I can't hear.
If our research only involving online database for systematic review and meta-analysis, is there any suggestion? What should we fill in data allocation part?
Okay, so this is on the systematic review. Like the previous question, right? The location part is it's not applicable lah for that student. Not applicable. You can just put not applicable. But having said that, usually this type of study is exempted from ethical review. But you can still submit to us. Let's say if you require ethics exemption code for that.
So, okay, this is my own question, Doctor. If it involves like meta-analysis just now, they still need to apply formally, but then they will get exemption, or they can email to you and straight away you give exemption, or how?
Okay, we have an exemption form. Another form for exemption studies if they would like to apply. Yeah.
Right. Okay, that's clear. Okay, one more. Is elderly considered as vulnerable group for social science research?
Yes, definitely. Elderly usually, especially when they have some diseases, or they are considered as vulnerable group for ethics research. Yeah.
Okay, right here. This student asking, we need REC approval before data collection. Does it mean that we cannot mention about where our